What if the most powerful thing you can do right now is nothing? There is a moment in every journey that most people misunderstand. It doesn't look powerful. It doesn't look productive. It doesn't look like progress. In fact, it often looks like nothing is happening at all. But that is exactly where the deeper shift begins. If you are hearing this right now, if something in you has been pulled toward this message, then understand this clearly. You are not behind, and you are not lost in delay. You are inside a phase that only a few ever recognize for what it truly is: a sacred pause, a hidden alignment, a quiet preparation that does not announce itself with noise. The world has taught you to fear stillness, to believe that if you are not constantly building, chasing, proving, or pushing, then you are falling behind. It has trained you to associate rest with laziness and silence with failure. But what if that was never true? What if the moments you call doing nothing are actually the moments where everything is being reorganized for you in ways you cannot yet see? There is a deeper intelligence moving beneath the surface of your life, and it does not operate on urgency. It does not rush. It does not panic. It aligns, and alignment often looks like delay to the untrained eye. You may feel like you are in a pause right now, like doors are not opening as fast as you expected, like certain paths have gone quiet, like motivation comes and goes in waves instead of constant fire, and part of you may wonder if something is wrong. But what if nothing is wrong? What if this is the exact stage where life is rearranging itself around you? There are seasons where action is everything, and there are seasons where stillness is the most powerful action you can take. Not because you are giving up, but because you are being recalibrated. Think of it like nature itself. Even the strongest trees do not grow visibly every single day. Some growth happens underground, in the roots, in the invisible structure that will later support everything the world will see. And right now, you may be in the root season, the part where nothing seems impressive from the outside, but everything is becoming unshakable on the inside. This is where clarity returns, not through effort, but through silence. This is where certain distractions fall away, without force. This is where you begin to outgrow things you once thought you needed. And strangely, this is also where life begins to protect you by slowing you down, because not every delay is rejection. Some delays are protection, some pauses are redirection, and some stillness is simply preparation for a timing you cannot yet comprehend. You might notice that your desire for external validation begins to fade during this phase, or that things you once chased with urgency no longer hold the same weight. That is not loss. That is refinement. It is the quiet process of your attention being pulled away from noise and redirected toward something more aligned with who you are becoming. And here is the part that most people miss. Nothing is wasted in this state. Not your confusion, not your rest, not your waiting. Even the moments where you feel like you are doing nothing are part of something that is being carefully arranged beyond your awareness. There is a version of your life that is already in motion, not imagined, not hoped for, but quietly assembling itself in the background. The right connections, the right timing, the right internal readiness, all of it is being synchronized in ways that do not require your constant interference. And your only task right now is not to force it. It is to remain aligned with yourself while it forms. That is why rest is not your enemy. Rest is not collapse. Rest is not failure. Rest is the maintenance of your inner alignment, while everything else is being prepared. There is a reason why some of your clearest insights come when you are not trying so hard to think. There is a reason why solutions appear when you step away. There is a reason why your nervous system settles when you finally stop chasing clarity and allow it to arrive on its own. Because life does not reveal its deepest timing under pressure, it reveals it in presence. And presence requires stillness. So if you are in a season where you feel like you are paused, consider this possibility. You are not being made to wait. You are being made ready. Something is adjusting itself. Around your existence, certain paths are closing, so others can open without resistance. Certain desires are fading, so stronger ones can emerge. Certain versions of you are dissolving, so a more aligned version can take their place without conflict. And all of this happens quietly, without announcement, without validation, without visible proof at first. But that does not make it less real. So, do not rush this phase. Do not judge it by external movement. Do not mistake its silence for emptiness. Because sometimes, the most important chapters of your life are the ones where nothing obvious is happening. Yet, everything essential is being rewritten. And, when the timing finally shifts, when the alignment completes, when what has been forming beneath the surface finally becomes visible, you will understand why nothing could be forced. You will understand why the waiting had purpose. And you will understand that this was never about doing nothing. It was about becoming ready for everything. Because something is already moving. Even if you're not. You've been trying so hard. And maybe that's the problem. There is a point where effort stops feeling like progress and starts feeling like pressure. At first it doesn't seem obvious. You tell yourself you're just being disciplined. You're just staying focused. You're just pushing a little harder. Because success requires consistency. And that's true to a point. But slowly something changes. Your mind feels louder, even when nothing around you is changing. Your body starts carrying a kind of tiredness that sleep doesn't fully fix. And your thoughts begin to revolve around outcomes more than experiences, results more than presence, control more than flow. This is the quiet edge of overworking, not the obvious burnout where everything stops, but the subtle kind where you are still moving, still functioning, still trying. But internally, something feels stretched too thin, and the hardest part is, people around you may not notice it at all. From the outside, you look like you're doing everything right. You're showing up. You're trying harder. You're refusing to give up. But inside, it can feel like you are constantly chasing something that keeps moving just a little further away, no matter how much effort you put in. And that creates a dangerous illusion. The belief that if something isn't working, that you must force it harder, aren't coming. You must push more intensely. That if life isn't responding, you must tighten your grip. But life doesn't always respond to force the way we expect it to. Sometimes The more tightly you hold something, the more strained everything becomes. Like trying to open a door by pushing when it was meant to be pulled, or trying to grow a plant by constantly checking its roots, or trying to make water settle by shaking the glass. There is a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from lack of ability, but from constant pressure without pause. And if you're in that space right now, it can start to feel like rest is something you haven't earned. Yet, like slowing down would mean losing ground, like stepping back would undo everything you've built. But that belief is part of the exhaustion itself. Because not everything grows under pressure. Some things only grow when pressure is removed. Think about it. When your mind is constantly focused on outcomes, it becomes harder to see the opportunities already forming around you. When you are always trying to control the next step, you can miss the natural timing of things trying to meet you halfway. There are moments in life where effort is essential, where discipline matters, where persistence is everything. But there are also moments where stepping back is not quitting. It is recalibrating. It is allowing space for clarity to return. It is giving your nervous system a chance to breathe again. It is letting your thoughts settle, so you can actually hear what your intuition has been trying to tell you beneath the noise, because emotional exhaustion doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it shows up as frustration over small things. Sometimes it shows up as impatience with timing. Sometimes it shows up as feeling like nothing is happening fast enough, even when you are doing everything you can. But underneath all of that is usually something simpler. You've been holding on too tightly for too long. And here's what most people don't realize. When you step back, even slightly, you don't lose momentum. You create space for alignment. You start noticing things you were too overwhelmed to see before. Ideas return that you thought you had lost. Energy begins to come back in small but noticeable ways. And most importantly, your relationship with the outcome begins to soften, because you are no longer trying to force life into a single direction. You are allowing it to reveal the right direction in its own timing. Stepping back doesn't mean giving up on what you want. It means refusing to destroy yourself in the process of chasing it. It means understanding that exhaustion is not a requirement for success. It means recognizing that clarity rarely arrives in moments of maximum pressure, but often returns in moments of pause. And in that pause, something important happens. You stop operating from urgency, and you start operating from awareness again. You begin to notice what actually feels aligned, not just what feels necessary. You begin to separate fear-driven effort from calm, intentional action. And slowly, the need to force things begins to loosen. This is where real change starts to shift, not always externally at first, but internally. In the way you think, in the way you breathe, in the way you respond instead of react. And surprisingly, when that internal shift happens, external life often begins to reorganize too. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped resisting the natural timing of things. Some opportunities don't appear under pressure. They appear in space. Some answers don't arrive while you are forcing them. They arrive when you finally allow yourself to step back far enough to see clearly again. So if you feel emotionally tired, mentally crowded, or stuck in a cycle of pushing and not receiving, it might not be a sign that you need to try harder. It might be a sign that you need to soften your approach, to breathe again, to create space again, to allow life to meet you without force. Because sometimes, the moment you stop trying to control everything is the moment everything begins to move in a way you couldn't have planned on your own. And the moment you let go, things begin to shift. Not all progress is visible. Some of it happens in silence. There is a kind of growth that does not announce itself. It does not come with visible progress. It does not show immediate results. It does not give you the satisfaction of something you can point to and say, "Look, I've changed." Instead, it happens quietly, in the background of your thoughts, in the pauses between your reactions, in the still moments when nothing seems to be happening on the surface, but everything is shifting underneath. This is unseen growth, and most people misunderstand it, because we are conditioned to equate growth with movement, with visible change, with achievement, milestones, and measurable progress. But not all transformation is meant to be seen right away. Some of the most important changes in a person's life happen in silence. You may not notice it at first. You may feel like you are stuck, like you are waiting, like life has slowed down without explanation. But what if that stillness is not emptiness? What if it is preparation? Because beneath the surface of your daily experience, something subtle is always unfolding. Your thoughts are reorganizing themselves. Your emotions are processing things you didn't have time to fully feel. Your perspective is quietly shifting without force. And this is where rest becomes more powerful than most people realize. Rest is not just physical pause. It is internal space. Space for your mind to unclench. Space for your emotions to settle. Space for your nervous system to stop operating in survival mode. When you are constantly moving, constantly reacting, constantly trying to keep up with everything, there is very little room for clarity to form. Everything becomes noise, layered on top of noise. And in that noise, even your own voice becomes harder to hear. But when you rest, truly rest, you are not stepping away from life. You are stepping back into yourself. And in that return, something begins to change. Thoughts that once felt overwhelming start to lose their intensity. Problems that seemed unsolvable begin to look more manageable. Emotions that felt tangled start to separate themselves, one by one, until you can finally understand what you were actually feeling beneath them. This is what internal transformation often looks like. Not dramatic breakthroughs, not sudden clarity, but a slow softening of confusion, a gradual return to balance, a quiet realignment with what is real and what is necessary. And it rarely happens in the middle of chaos. It happens in the aftermath, in the stillness, in the space you create, when you are no longer forcing yourself to constantly figure everything out at once. There is something deeply healing about allowing yourself to pause without guilt, because guilt interrupts healing, pressure interrupts clarity, and urgency interrupts alignment. When you are always pushing forward, your attention stays locked on the external world, on what is next, what is missing, what is not yet achieved. But rest shifts that attention inward. And in that inward shift, something important happens. You begin to notice yourself again. Not just your goals, not just your responsibilities, but you, your thoughts, your patterns, your emotional weight, your needs that were quietly ignored while you were busy trying to keep everything together. And in that noticing, healing begins, not because you forced it, but because you finally allowed space for it. Healing is not always about fixing something broken. Often, it is about creating enough stillness for what is already within you to reorganize itself naturally, just like nature does not rush the growth of roots. Beneath the soil, your inner world does not rush its own correction. It unfolds in layers, in timing, in rhythm. And sometimes, the most important progress is invisible. You may still be in the same external situation for a while, the same responsibilities, the same environment, the same unanswered questions. But internally, something is different. You are no longer reacting the same way. You are no longer carrying the same emotional weight. You are no longer lost in the same mental loops. That is transformation. Even if nothing around you has changed yet, because before life shifts outwardly, it often shifts inwardly first, and alignment begins in that inward shift. Alignment is not about forcing everything into place. It is about gradually becoming someone who no longer resists what is meant for them and no longer clings to what is not. Rest helps that process happen. Because when you rest, you are no longer over-identifying with urgency. You are no longer trapped in constant mental resistance. You are no longer trying to control every outcome at once. Instead, you begin to trust something quieter, something slower, something more grounded. And in that trust, your inner world begins to settle into a direction that feels less forced and more natural. You start noticing small signs of clarity returning, a lighter feeling in your thoughts, a softer response to situations that once triggered stress, a growing sense that you don't need to have everything figured out right now. And that is the beginning of real alignment. Not perfection, not certainty, but ease, a sense that you are no longer fighting your own life at every step. So if you are in a season where things feel off, or quiet, or uncertain, it does not necessarily mean something is wrong. It may mean something is forming, something internal, something invisible, something that will eventually become the foundation for everything external that follows, because unseen growth is still growth. And sometimes the most powerful transformation is not the one the world can see immediately, but the one that quietly changes who you are becoming when no one is watching. And that's where real change begins. When you stop chasing what's meant for, you start coming closer. There comes a point in life where trying harder stops bringing clarity and starts bringing tension. You begin to notice it quietly. The more you push, the more everything feels slightly resistant. The more you force outcomes, the more distant they seem to become. And even when you are doing everything right, something inside still feels unsettled. This is often the place where life begins to teach a different lesson, not about effort, but about trust. Trust is not passive. It is not giving up. It is not ignoring responsibility or abandoning your goals. Trust is something far more subtle and far more powerful. It is the decision to stop fighting the natural timing of things, even while you continue to show up with intention. It is learning to participate in life without trying to control every outcome. And for many people, this is not easy at first, because we are taught that certainty comes from control, that results come from constant pressure, that if something matters, we must hold on to it tightly and never let go. But life does not respond well to being held too tightly. Like water in your hands, the more you grip it, the more it slips away, and the more relaxed your hands become, the more naturally it remains. There is a rhythm to things that cannot be rushed, a timing that cannot be forced, a flow that cannot be commanded into existence. And when you step back just enough to notice it, you begin to see that not everything is meant to happen on your schedule. Not because it will never happen, but because it is still becoming ready to meet you in the right form, at the right moment, in the right state. This is where patience becomes more than waiting. It becomes emotional balance, because impatience is not just about time. It is about internal pressure. It is the feeling that something should already be different, that progress should already be visible, that life should already be responding in a certain way. But patience is the softening of that pressure. It is the ability to remain steady, even when outcomes are not immediate. It is the quiet understanding that delay is not denial, and that what is meant for you does not require force to arrive. When you begin to trust life in this way, something inside you starts to change. You stop interpreting silence as rejection. You stop seeing pauses as failure. You stop assuming that what is not happening yet is somehow against you. Instead, you begin to allow space for things to unfold in their own rhythm. And in that space, emotional balance starts to return, because so much emotional turbulence comes from resistance, from trying to push life in a direction it is not yet ready to move, from attaching your inner peace to external timing. But when trust enters, resistance begins to soften. You are still aware of your goals. You still care deeply. But you are no longer emotionally collapsing. Every time something takes longer than expected, there is a steadiness forming within you, a quiet sense that you can move forward without needing to control every step of the path. And this is where life often begins to feel different. Not necessarily faster, but lighter, more natural, less forced, because when you stop gripping outcomes so tightly, you begin to notice things you were missing before, opportunities that were already present but overlooked, ideas that come more naturally, decisions that feel clearer without overthinking. Trust does not remove action. It removes strain from action. You still show up. You still try. You still take steps forward, but those steps are no longer driven by panic or pressure. They are guided by awareness, and that shift changes everything. Because when you are not constantly trying to force results, you create space for alignment. And alignment is often what brings the right opportunities, people, and timing together in ways effort alone cannot manufacture. There is a deeper intelligence in life that does not respond to urgency, but responds to readiness. And readiness is not just about circumstances. It is about your internal state, your emotional balance, your ability to stay grounded, even in uncertainty, your willingness to continue forward without needing constant proof that everything is working immediately. Trust grows in that space, not in perfect conditions, but in uncertain ones, when you choose to remain steady, even when clarity is not fully visible yet, when you choose to believe that progress is happening, even if it is not yet obvious, when you choose to stay open, closing down in frustration, and slowly, something shifts. Not always around you at first, but within you, you become less reactive, less tense, less consumed by when, and more present in how. And ironically, that is often when things begin to flow more naturally outside of you as well. Because flow is not created through force. It is created through cooperation with timing. So if you are in a moment where things feel uncertain, delayed, or in between, it does not mean you are off track. It may simply mean you are being asked to trust the process instead of trying to outrun it, to stay steady instead of spiraling into pressure, to believe that what is unfolding does not need to be rushed in order to be right, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not to push harder, but to remain calm enough to let life meet you halfway, because what's yours doesn't need to be forced. If this message reached you, then it's time to slow down, not speed up. And so, as you reach the end of this moment, let everything slow down just a little, not because something is over, but because something within you deserves space to breathe. If your mind has been busy, let it soften. If your heart has been heavy, let it lighten. If your thoughts have been searching for certainty, allow them, just for now, to rest in not knowing, because not knowing is not failure. It is often where life quietly begins to reorganize itself in ways you cannot yet see. You do not need to rush toward clarity to be safe. You do not need to force movement to be on track, and you do not need constant proof to trust that your path is still unfolding exactly as it should. Even in silence, something is happening. Even in stillness, something is forming. Even in the moments where nothing feels visibly different, life is still gently aligning pieces that will make sense later. There are seasons that feel loud, fast, and full of direction. And there are seasons that feel quiet, uncertain, and paused. But neither of them mean you are lost. They are simply different phases of the same journey. And if you are in a quieter phase right now, it does not mean you are behind. It means you are being held in a space where things are settling into place before they become visible, like soil preparing for growth, long before anything breaks through the surface, like dawn preparing itself long before the sun appears, like a path forming beneath your feet before you fully see where it leads. You are not missing your timing. You are moving within it. And even if you cannot see every step ahead, you are still being guided by something deeper than urgency, something steadier than fear, something more patient than doubt. So let yourself rest in that, not as escape, but as alignment, because rest is not a pause in your progress. It is part of your progress. It is where your mind resets, where your emotions soften, where your inner world finds its balance again, after carrying too much for too long. You are allowed to stop bracing for what comes next. You are allowed to stop over-explaining your pace. You are allowed to stop measuring your worth against visible results. Right now, your only responsibility is to remain connected to yourself, to breathe a little deeper, to loosen the pressure you may not even realize you are carrying, to come back to the simple truth that you are still here, still moving, still becoming. And that is enough, because life does not only work through effort, it also works through timing, through readiness, through quiet alignment that happens beneath awareness, long before it becomes visible in reality. And often, what feels like delay is simply life making sure that when things do arrive, you are ready to receive them without losing yourself in the process. So, even if things feel unclear, even if answers feel distant, even if you are in a space where everything feels like it is still unfolding, behind a curtain, trust that nothing meaningful about your path is being lost. It is only being arranged with care, with timing, with a kind of intelligence that does not rush because it does not need to. You are still on the right path, not because everything is perfect, but because you have not stopped becoming. And even in your uncertainty, even in your questions, even in your quieter moments, you are still moving forward in ways that matter more than you can currently measure. So let go of the need to force certainty today. Let go of the pressure to have it all figured out right now. And let yourself simply be where you are, not stuck, not delayed, not forgotten, but present, breathing, learning, adling, and becoming. There is a calm kind of confidence that begins to rise when you stop resisting your current moment. Not the confidence that comes from control, but the confidence that comes from trust. The quiet knowing that you do not need to force what is already being shaped for you in its own time. And when you reach that place, even for a brief moment, something inside you settles. The noise becomes softer, the urgency becomes lighter, and you begin to feel something that was always theirs. Beneath everything else, you are okay, even now. You are still on your way, even here, and your path is still unfolding, even in silence. So rest if you need to, breathe if you can. Trust, even if only a little at a time, because what is meant for you is not slipping away in the quiet. It is moving toward you in its own timing. And when it arrives, you will not feel rushed anymore. You will feel ready, steady, and at peace with the journey that brought you here. Rest now. Your dreams are already finding their way to you.